Hello, my name is Aaron. I introduce myself as Loose Cannon, but everyone calls me Pods. Today we're going to be talking about how to make Nocino's pizza dough. Now, Nocino's pizza dough is a 70% hydration dough. That means that the ratio of liquids to solids is about 70%. When we're on the playa, it's about 80 because of the humidity and temperature there. Consistency is key. The more that we make everything consistent in the process, the easier it is to cook and serve and have a consistently amazing pizza. When we're making the dough, we've got a mixing bowl for this. Now we're going to be using 8 cups of flour. Beautiful. We're going to be using roughly 2 teaspoons of sugar. Approximately 4 teaspoons of salt. As well as 4 teaspoons of active dry yeast. Now, we want to make sure we're using water that is between 110 and 115 degrees Fahrenheit when we're adding it. That's because that activates the yeast to make it come alive. If the temperature is up at 120 degrees Fahrenheit, that'll murder the yeast. Murdering the yeast is bad. If it's underneath 80 degrees Fahrenheit, the yeast just doesn't wake up. When measuring the temperature, we want to make sure that the thermometer is not touching the sides of the container, but always touching just the water. So great, we've got some nice, good temperature water here. Whenever we're making dough, we always make sure you add the dry ingredients first, then add the wet ingredients. Otherwise, you can get dumplings, which is bad, unless you're making dumplings. Then it's good. All right, we're gonna add 4 cups of water here. And now we just start going to town. Ooh, that feels nice. Look at that. We want to make sure that the consistency is good. So if as we're putting it together it feels a little too loose and watery, we add a little more flour. If it feels like it's too dry, we add a little bit more water. When we're doing this is use good body mechanics. Now, what does that mean? The biggest litmus is if your body hurts while you're doing it, you're using your body wrong. One of the things that I find is I keep my legs a little loose. I do a little dance while I'm doing this stuff because it just keeps everything flowing nicely. That, and I like dancing. So once it starts pulling together, we can go ahead and get rid of the bowl and move directly to putting it on the surface where we're actually going to start kneading it. Now, always make sure you have flour on the surface because otherwise things are going to stick, and we don't want things to stick. Oh yeah. Now that we're actually kneading the dough, this is probably the most time-consuming portion of the dough making process. What this actually does is it releases the gluten. Release the gluten! You'll notice the dough right now, see it's not that smooth. It's got this texture, looks a little bit like a brain. We want to make sure that it gets to this place where it gets nice and smooth. Take a look at the dough, it's getting smoother than it was before, but it's still very textured. Again, we want to keep on getting this till it's nice and smooth to determine if it's ready. Starting to get smoother, but one of the tests that we use to see how the pizza's going is something called the window pane test. Whereas if we can get the dough thin enough that we can see the light through it, but it doesn't tear, that's good. Not thin enough and just tearing. Not ready. See how smooth it's getting? It's not like brain-like anymore. It's got a nice ball texture. And then you'll notice that, see, once we get a little bit more, let's let it stretch. You can start seeing how the light, see, you can see the light through it before it tears? So you can see color through there. It's good. We're gonna let it rise now, which allows the yeast that's inside of there to continually eat the sugar that's inside of there and the carbohydrates that are inside of the flour. And it just keeps on pooping out carbon dioxide, and it'll increase the size of the dough. So just the outside of it is going to be coated in olive oil. There. We're going to cover it in plastic wrap. Make sure that we don't want oxygen or any of the air to touch the dough. It'll make a crust on the dough, and when we're doing other things, the crust won't be as stretchy, and we want things to be stretchy and good and pretty and clean. Okay, and now we're gonna wait about an hour or until the dough doubles in size. So you can see we're back now. We've let the dough rise, much bigger than before, maybe a little bit more than double. What we want to do is we want to take the dough now and we're going to cut it up into 16 individual little pizza balls, and then we're going to let those proof for about 10 to 15 minutes. So we're going to make sure we have a nice floured surface here. And then we're going to turn the dough out on top of it. Wait for it. Oh. So at this point, we don't want to punch down the dough. We don't want to overwork the dough. We want to be as gentle as possible from this point forward with the dough.
Water?
No.
Oh, Nocino!
Beautiful. Look at that. So now that it's cut, again, being gentle, we want to take each of these pieces. We just want to give them in little balls, and I call it jellyfishing it because you're just kind of rolling it out under itself here. So I'm just being really gentle, and you can see I'm just kind of pulling the dough, and I'm just kind of bunching it at the bottom, so it's kind of starting to look like a little jellyfish. And then put it onto another floured surface, and then I'm going to do this 15 more times.
Oh, Nocino!
We're gonna make sure we cover these things up, and we're gonna let them proof, which is rising, for another 10 to 15 minutes, and that's just to let the dough sink in a little bit more. Let it, just that. And again, one of the important things here is that they don't have air touching them because they will start to dry out. We want to make sure that the balls are not touching, or they're not close enough that as they start to rise, they'll get a little bit bigger, that they don't bump up and rub into each other. We don't want any bump and rubbing. The old bump and rub makes things a little bit harder. You know what I'm talking about, am I right? Yeah.
Thanks for watching this video on how to make pizza dough. Go make some great pizza.